Welcome back, everybody, to the episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. This is episode number 127, dedicated to a man who on August 27th, 1995, won the 95th U.S. Golf Amateur Championship, Mr. Tiger Woods. And as always, thank you for sitting in, downloading to the episode of the podcast. On today's episode, we are joined by Mr. Jesse Schober, co-host of Big Pick Energy, to come on and talk about his podcast that him and his co-host Chris have started, and everything and other things that go along with gambling. Yes, sports betting is a very big thing in America. It's a very big thing in general. And once I started to talk to Jesse about what it is that he loves and his approach to the podcast, I enjoyed every second of our conversation. This is the very first time I have had someone come on to devote the entire show about, second time. I forgot we recently had the guys from Pluto Sports Analytics on, so the second time that we had someone on to talk about and devote it to sports betting. Your obsession, their obsession, and really just the craze that it is. I mean, I work with a guy that does this very thing on a regular basis, and I see him go up and down and up and down and up and down, and how even though when he gets down, he still is sucked into making another bet. So it was very fun. Jesse, great personality, great back and forth, and I'm sure you guys will enjoy this conversation as well. Without further ado, let's go ahead and take a trip to Tallahassee, Florida to enjoy my fun conversation with Mr. Jesse Schober, co-host of Big Pick Energy. Hey, Jesse, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Jay. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, no problem. This year has been different. It's been abnormal, unique, but it's also allowed us to be able to find things about ourselves and do things different about ourselves that allow us to find different ways, creative ways to pass the time, especially when we can't go outside to do anything when we are stuck inside of our homes. What during this year, the past 5 to 6 months, new hobby, or what did you do to kind of pass the time that may have been different than what you may have expected?
Well, I aged about 40 years and got a bird feeder out in front of my big window, and I have been in a war with squirrels for about 4 months, and to the point where I built a squirrel feeder for them. So now I'm officially my grandparents.
You know, most people, I had some people on here recently and I asked them the same kind of question and they say, oh, it's just Netflix or hiking, things like that. Never with the bird feeder. That's pretty unique.
Yeah, well, my children have a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old, so they think the birds are pretty, and I think the squirrels are annoying. But that's basically what we've been doing. Of course, the Netflix, but we have a big bay window, and so there's been a lot of opportunity for me to yell at squirrels.
Kind of the old man grandparent aspect, like you mentioned. Was that something that was like a spur of the moment thing, or had you had aspirations or thought about this years ago and it just finally got put into place right now?
No. My wife's a teacher, so she's been home for 6 months. So after she had spent all of our money buying plants and building a garden, I wanted a birdhouse. I have no idea why I did it, and then immediately regretted it. So that's basically what we've been doing is she gardens and then I yell at things.
Kind of seems like a good back and forth, a good connection. She's quiet doing something, and you're yelling doing something completely different, which is nice and enjoyable. Here in Indiana, where I am, I just done more hiking. Like I know some people say it's boring, but it just allowed me to get outside, not be inside the walls in my apartment, and then just go out and see different sites in Indiana where I live. So the whole hiking thing was my kind of ordeal. If this thing gets prolonged, or some say we go back into quarantine. I know some states, they went back into that. I don't know where exactly you are at this point in time. But if there was something else that pushed this thing out, what would you do? What may you do to kind of pass the time if we have to stick like this for 3, 4, 5 more months?
Well, I'm in Florida, so we probably won't. We don't care. Our government doesn't care. They're like, whatever, it's fine. But you say you're in Indiana. I'm originally from Wisconsin, so I understand your great geography. But I mean great, I mean flat. So
Yes.
So a lot of hiking means a lot of walking in a straight line.
Yes, absolutely. It's weird you say that because that's a lot of walking that normally happens. But I do live across the street from a park, a very large park in Indianapolis that does have some hills. And I say some, I mean like they're minor. They're not really like they're not like mountainous type hills. Don't get me wrong, people. No, these are like these hills are small. They're tiny, but it does allow you to not have the straight flat style of walking. Even when I can, there's even some parts of the park where. I'm walking and it's all flat like you've mentioned, but then I look down and there's water, but I'm still not going down where the water is. I'm walking straight. So it's a lot of flat walking, a lot of flat ground walking, a lot of straight walking, as you say. But it has been nice to just be able to do something that's away from the news, away from the norm, away from social media, to just get outside. I have my headphones on, but sometimes I take my headphones off to just hear what nature and what's going on, to just kind of alleviate and forget about the hustle and bustle of life, because Jesse, this time period has not been fun. I don't know how it has been for you, but for me, just watching the news and seeing everything going on, it hasn't been fun.
Well, I run a restaurant, so it's
Man.
been not fun either. It's running a restaurant in a pandemic, especially in Florida, has not been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of hard work and a lot of long days, which is why sports coming back, even in the abbreviated form that it has been a godsend. Because otherwise I was spending quite a bit of time playing out of the park baseball, which is a simulator for the uber nerd. And I was doing that quite too much. So I needed real people.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm curious. Now, is your restaurant still one that's afloat? Like it didn't have to fold due to what happened?
Yeah, we actually never shut down because Florida allowed
good.
us to go to takeout only for a while. We were able to survive that, and then now we're up to like 50% capacity. We had a bunch of outside tables. We've done everything we can to try to survive this, and still at the same time, we do social distancing. Everyone wears masks. We do everything we can to comply and make people feel as comfortable as possible during this time.
Good. I wasn't really sure you were in Florida. What part of Florida are you in?
Tallahassee.
Okay. I had some family down in Clearwater. I got some buddies down in Tampa. I got a buddy in Miami. I know people that went to Florida State, but they're not there anymore. That's kind of my only connection to that part of the country is a few friends that went to Florida State for school, and then they're now back down in the Tampa Clearwater area. But let's get to your podcast. The first time I saw the name of your show, it made me laugh. It was a great play on words. It just made me kind of intrigued to see what you and Chris talk about and kind of the back and forth banter that you guys have. What was kind of the origin of when this was going to get started, why to get started, stuff like that?
So, well, the host, I'm one host of Big Pick Energy, is a gambling daily fantasy nonsense of a show. And how it was born out was I've been a stand-up comedian for 8 years, and I had a previous podcast called Field Screams, which was a true crime and sports show that was pretty irreverent. That was a lot of fun for a few years. And then Chris and I met bartending together, and I realized that he was possibly the goofiest person I'd ever met, but very entertaining, and people loved to watch him. And then we had a shared love for just being complete degenerates when it comes to sports gambling, and we spent most of our salaries doing that. So we combined that, my experience with podcasting and being on a mic, and his just raw talent of being a buffoon, and we combined that into our show, Big Pick Energy. And it was his name that he came up with because we were like within 2 minutes. And I don't know. I mean, having your own show, a lot of the times you're like, what do I name it? What do I call it? How do I brand it? Within 2 minutes, he's like, no, Big Pick Energy. And I was like, that's stupid. And then we ended up going with it. So what do I know?
I guess I told you when I first heard the name, it sticks out. It's different. It's something that it takes a quirky person to utilize that type of style, in my opinion. I'm not a quirky, not a bad sense at all, but a person that thinks a little bit different to utilize that name for a show, but it works, and you guys work. And I think I heard recently, and now help me if I'm mistaken, I've listened to a lot of podcasts recently, that this show was planning on starting back in the spring before everything happened. Is that true?
Oh, we'd been practice episodes. We had bought all of our equipment. We actually built a studio in Chris's house. We were ready to go, and then when I actually had tickets to go to a Hawks game the weekend the NBA shut down, and after that happened, we didn't know what to do. What do we do? How do we do a show about sports gambling when there's no sports? And I mean, it got bad, man. We were we were betting on the Democratic National Convention and like betting on award shows. We didn't have anything to do. So then we started betting NASCAR eventually. Neither of us watched NASCAR, but we were betting on it. And then once started to build back up, we were like, okay, now let's see how we can do this. And once baseball came back and basketball was like going to do the bubble, we felt comfortable to try to go ahead and release what we've been working on. But it's a weekly show because we want people to. We're not gurus, okay? We're not savants when it comes to gambling. We're just two guys who put a lot of time and research into it. Well, one guy puts a lot of research time, and then Chris flies by the seat of his pants. But so we want to put out a weekly episode. People can benefit from that research and see our process, our methodology. We're very open about why we do the things we do and how we do it. So we're open with losses, and we will definitely brag about wins, but we'll definitely be open about what wrong roads we took when it comes to gambling and stuff. So we thought it was important for it to be topical and weekly and not just a post-game type show.
I like it. How was I'll get more into like the future stuff with the show later on, but how was betting on the Democratic National Convention and the award shows? Because that's something that's you have to be pretty obsessive to do things like that because that's not normal for most people.
Well, that's DraftKings' fault. So we actually you get like notifications on your phone like, oh, you can bet on this, you degenerate. So I'd bet on shows previously like the Game of Thrones finals and Game of Thrones finale and previous award shows. And what it is, it's just prop bets. Okay. It's also odds on winners, that kind of thing. Like if you're familiar with prop bets, as far as like where the Super Bowl goes, like you can bet on how long the national anthem is going to be.
Yeah.
And there's things like that. What color the Kool-Aid? Jesus, the Gatorade's going to be, and it's stuff like that. It's ridiculous. There's not a lot of money thrown. At one point, honestly, DraftKings and FanDuel were both doing simulations on Madden you could bet on.
What?
Yes, because there were millions of people who have a gambling addiction with nothing to do. Okay, it was dangerous. So they were trying to, avoid people out in the park doing turtle races. I don't know where they came up with that idea, but we did. We bet on it. And there is actually, I've come to learn, a pretty big world of esports gambling.
Yeah, I've actually I talked to a guy who's up in Canada, connected with him via social media, and he said that esports, him and his friends do some analytics as far as like they sell bets and things like that. I'm in partnership with them here on the podcast, and one of the things they told me in one of our first initial meetings, it was that esports for them was really big. I said, esports, like that. It baffled me. It kind of confused me. He was like, no, like people like betting on esports. And so that kind of got them through a couple months before the NBA came back and sports came back. Because right now they're just doing esports and baseball. They're going to do the upcoming NBA season and then NFL stuff as well. They're not doing the NHL right now. They're not doing college football right now due to the uncertainty with because they weren't sure how hockey was going to be. They weren't sure what was going to happen with college football. So they're just going to focus their time on just a select few things. But yeah, he even mentioned that esports was big. And I was just kind of scratching my head in amazement just because I didn't realize that. But you mentioned prop bets. I know a lot of people bet I work with a guy. He bets a lot of the money lines, doesn't really touch the over-under. He does occasionally, but not really. With the prop bets, that can be kind of fun. What are some of the your most fun things in any sport when it comes to prop bets that you've bet on?
So the most usual one is over/under for players' points, or points, rebounds, assists. That combination. It's really fun in a big game. So here's the rule about gambling: you can bet on anything if you can find a book that'll take it. And the bigger the game is, the more options that are out there.
Okay.
So you can find some weird ones. The Super Bowl is the best example because there's always there'll be the third string running back and they'll say, will you have over 25 yards total receiving and rushing? But like with the NBA, on Monday night or Sunday night, I had Nikola Jokic over 40 and a half. I had him under 40 and a half points, rebounds, and assists combined. He ended up with 40. So like that kind of thing is the thing I love to do. And it benefits. So a lot of people like to gamble. Now, they may not say I like to gamble, but they play the lottery or they go to casinos and play the slots, or they go to bingo, whatever. There's a lot of people who enjoy gambling and who like that thrill. Well, I'd rather use my obsession of basketball and baseball and sports like that and try to, give myself a little advantage. So I watch about as much basketball as anyone I've ever met. So I'd rather use that knowledge that I've built up to put my money in a little smarter way. So I don't do a lot of other sports because that's just throwing good money after bad. So with the basketball, if I can do my research and I watch players, and I try to stay away from the whole I just like this player. I try to look at the statistical part of it. So one of them was Donovan Mitchell over 25.5. Give me that all day because Donovan Mitchell's been on fire, and that's easy money. And there's other factors into that, which I'm sure many people know, but that's the most common prop bet that I'll play.
Okay. What now? I'm throwing this out there because there may be somebody listening to this that says, well, I want to bet, or I know friends that do, I do occasionally, but I stop because it affects the way that I view the game. How have you been able to stay entertained with knowing that you have money on the line when you're in the game that you're watching at that time?
Well, so we're actually going to be putting out what we call the Gambling Manifesto, our rules for gambling on our network, Podcastic, that we joined recently. It's going to be up on that site. It'll be up on our site. And one of the rules is I don't bet on my own team. I'm a Milwaukee Bucks fan. It's bad karma for me. Because the Bucks have been the favorite all season. So betting on them, I'm just guaranteeing they're going to get upset. And if they're the underdog, I'm guaranteeing that I'm too confident in them. So one of my things is I don't bet on my own team. So I'm already involved in that game anyways. So what I do, and I try to know when to stay away from games because it's just too unpredictable. For example, the Lakers-Blazers series, I took the Blazers to cover game 1. And after that, I've kind of stayed away from it because I did not know how LeBron was going to react, and I didn't know the injury aspect of Portland. And staying away the last 3 games has probably benefited me because I would have probably taken Portland to cover at least one of those games. And then I got burned I put too much confidence in your local Pacers there. I took them to cover 3 times this week, and they burned me all 3 times because it's like they'll show life, they'll be fine. No, they were not. They were terrible, and they screwed me. So it's I like the aspect of having money on games and of teams I'm not fans of. It's a lot of fun during the regular season. And I'll pick like a 14 parlay, and I'll have games going from all the way from 5 p.m. to 11 on the West Coast, and it makes it more entertaining for me. And the other aspect is that we also do a lot of daily fantasy plays, which helps you also in the same way. You have a guy playing on for the Texas Rangers, and I'm never going to watch a Texas Rangers game, but I have a guy going that night that could help me. So to me, it actually increases my involvement in sports and my enjoyment out of it.
One thing I will tell every person, I don't know if you mentioned the Pacers that you put money on them recently. I would advise every person. Now I know they just got swept, so those listening to this don't think like Jay's going in the future, hoping that his team's still playing. No, the Pacers are not playing. But if you would have talked to me before you did that bet, and you would have said, Jay, what do you think about the Pacers? Is this a wise move? I would have said, don't put any money on the Pacers where they have to do good. Now, if you want them to fail, okay, good. Okay, I get that. But with the way that this Pacers team is this year, the injuries, and then like the inability to coach and make adjustments during the game, I would have just said stay as far away from this team as possible. But coming up soon, basketball will still be going on, but we'll have football. We'll have NFL football back. Does your mindset about gambling, yours specifically, or how you advise people, does it change towards football? Because I know that's more king in America. More people watch that. That is the sport that gets all of the attention when it's on. I mean, it holds one specific day of the year, of the week, with Sunday, then even Monday night. If you have other stuff on, you're probably going to watch Monday Night Football over a hockey game or even your favorite baseball team. But when it comes to football, I know a lot of people will be looking towards that. What's your approach to football games? So
this is why the partnership works with me and Chris. So Chris is much, much better when it comes to football, especially on the fantasy side. I approach football mainly from a traditional side, and I like to do normally, I don't know yet how I'm going to do it with this year, honestly. So normally I love to do futures bets when it comes to NFL. I love picking over and under wins. You can usually get pretty good division odds. and you can parlay that with an over-under. Like the rule of thumb is always take the Patriots to win the the AFC East, and then parlay it with something else. But this year, I don't know how many games they're going to play. There's a very good chance an entire team could get COVID and miss games like we've seen in baseball. So I'm trying to figure out what to do as far as futures bets. Now, when it comes to betting on a Sunday, that I love to do four or five team parlays and just pick the spreads that I like. Not necessarily the teams that I like, but I like the odds. I like to really exploit the trendy teams because there's a lot of trendy teams in the NFL season. That's one of the biggest things in the NFL is there's always there's two schools. There's the trendy team, like, oh my God, watch out for this team. That's been the Bucks for the last 10 years. And then you have by Buccaneers, I mean, and then you have the nobody believes in this team, which is usually a team that's like the Titans. The Titans were the nobody believes in this team this year, and then they somehow became overhyped. And the same thing happened with the Browns a couple years ago. So I try to avoid both of those teams. Nobody believes in us, and then the everybody believes in us. I try to avoid those teams and find somewhere in the middle where the odds will actually help me benefit and make me some money.
For the upcoming season, you mentioned two phrases right there. Nobody believes in us and everybody believes in us. Who would you say are those two teams for the upcoming football year season? I know it's been different. We can't normally prepare. We can't prepare like we normally do. There's no preseason. I mean, even some of the practices that we're able to see in scrimmages, like it's really, there's not really much coverage. So when it comes to nobody believes in us and everybody believes in us, who would you say fits that description for this upcoming season?
Well, everybody believes in us is definitely Tampa Bay. Gronk is getting, I think he's at like plus 700 to win comeback player of the year, which is ridiculous. And then I love the weapons. I get it. They've got great weapons. I don't see it. And I think that it's a dangerous position. And then conversely, the nobody believes this team is the Patriots. They got a little bit more buzz when they got Cam Newton, but we haven't seen Cam Newton play a full good year in, 3 or 4 years. So they're definitely nobody believes us. And the other one is an interesting that's kind of gone on the radar under that is in the same division is the Miami Dolphins. They've went and spent a lot of draft capital and a lot of money on building what could be a championship defense. And if they get anything from that offense, that division that is a complete toss-up outside of the Bills, who are should be respected. I think that's another nobody believes in this team because it's just the Dolphins. But they got me buying in a little bit on that defense.
Okay, nice. I'll end it with this. Right before I let you go ahead and share people can listen to your podcast, connect with you on social media, websites, things like that. With the NBA, if someone's looking for advice about trying to bet or gamble on the rest of the playoffs, we see Lakers are up 3-1, Mavs and Clippers are 2-2, Pacers, the Heat swept the Pacers. The Celtics and Raptors are about to meet in the first round on Thursday. But looking down the road in the NBA playoffs, if someone wanted advice on who to put money on or what, say, prop bets to put their money on, what advice would you give that person?
Well, I think it'll depend on what the prop bet is, but you're pretty safe taking the over when it comes to Giannis. He continues to be incredible, and yes, I'm a homer. I'm a Bucks fan. I have a signed Giannis jersey. You can't see it, but it's behind me, and I love him more than probably a little, not more than my children, but he's considered in the same realm. But you take the over with Giannis. He's gonna keep putting up the numbers, whether Chris Middleton shows up or not. Giannis is gonna put up the numbers, and I'm reaching the point where I'm done betting against LeBron, at least until the finals. I don't know what's going on with the Clippers. I don't know if the Mavericks are just that good, if Luka Doncic is that good, which I believe he is. But I'm done betting against LeBron, and I'm probably going to ride him at least to the finals, and then figure out if it's the Bucks how that matchup works. And the other team that I've been losing money betting against is the Raptors. Don't doubt the Raptors. That team is good. They are a very, very good team, and Kyle Lowry is a stud, and Fred VanVleet is one of the most frustrating players to bet against in the world because he should not be that good, and he keeps hitting shots.
Yes, he does. Great way to put that, Jesse. This has been fun. Where can people listen to your podcast and then also connect with you either on social media or a couple websites that you mentioned earlier? Yeah,
so Big Pick Energy, bigpickenergy.com. Say that name a few times fast and see if you don't get in trouble. We also are on everywhere you can get podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, our Heart Radio. I think we can even get us on Alexa. And then we recently joined a network, Podcastic, which will be launching on September 1st. You'll be able to find us there. And we have a Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. And we post lineups daily on Facebook and Instagram for baseball and basketball daily fantasy. And then I post my NBA bets on there. And we actually also post MMA lineup picks for UFC fights. And then once the NFL gets started, we're actually going to be doing an NFL Palooza episode coming out soon where we just break down the NFL from traditional gambling and from a daily fantasy and traditional fantasy standpoint.
Nice, guys. I will also, as you know, I tend to share something under the tweet when I tweet the link out to the upcoming episode. So be looking out for that on Twitter, on my Twitter page at jstevens07. I don't normally say that at the beginning of the show, so I'll say it now. Look for me, and when I share this out, I'll put something under the tweet when I share this episode so you guys have more info and are able to connect and learn more about the Big Pick Energy podcast. Jesse, thank you so much on this Tuesday morning for waking up and just talking about something that you love, which is gambling, sports betting, and things like that. Thanks so much for coming on here on the Jay Stevens podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jay. And man, I know we just met and we just hooked up, but man, you are one of the hardest working dudes in the industry. I just see you putting out episodes like every day. Don't you? You had nothing else to do. You were just put them out, man. And so I respect the hustle.
One thing that Jesse talked about that DraftKings and even FanDuel have noticed and have realized, with no sports, they can put other things in the app or on the website for you to bet on, that you can bet on. And, well, with them doing that, they quickly realized people will bet on things other than sports. Cooking shows, competitive whatever. Put a competition out there. Put a TV show on, a reality TV show, and go ahead and say, hey, yes, you can put your money on X, Y, or Z. And people quickly realize it's not just sports people bet on. They'll bet on anything. And I know there's friendly wagers that don't have money, but then there are also those wagers that do have money. Whatever side of the fence you're on, or you do not participate at all, and you're just an outside observer upon what people have grown to love, sit back, relax, enjoy it. It's fun for people. It gets them really, really high, and at times it can get you really, really low. Thank you for listening to the episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. If you're not on Twitter and you would love to connect with the podcast, send your emails to jstevenspod@gmail.com. Remember to always subscribe, rate, and review. It's a great way for people that search for a new podcast to listen to come across this one. Then remember to always get the word out about the podcast via word of mouth. The things that we enjoy in life, we are more willing and somewhat wired to tell other people about. So no matter if this was your first episode or if you have been listening since episode number 1, be sure to let people know about the podcast. This has been episode 127 of the Jay Stevens Podcast. I'll see you next time.